See, that's another thing where people look totally different with their hats or without their hats. When Mo dialed in, I didn't recognize that, that's the Mo that we're having this session with. And I was about to ask him,
Hajj. How are
I was
you?
about to ask him, so what are you smoking? I'm good, man.
I'm smoking a Patina.
Excellent.
Good choice, I'd say.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
How you been?
Well,
Good, guys. Good. Thank you for having me. I feel very cultured today. Being an American, I don't get to talk to you guys from Europe or I'm assuming you're in the Middle East.
Correct.
So this is a pleasure and an honor. So thank you guys for having me and joining today.
Well, the pleasure is all ours, and many thanks for tuning in. I can also reassure you that we've had so many people logging in from all over the place. Like, we've got plenty of American people, the Middle East, as you mentioned, Lebanon, Africans, people from Europe. So it's quite a good crowd, I'd say. And I'm truly grateful that we get to share this wonderful session with you. And
awesome. Thank you.
More people to Patina Cigars, hopefully. So for all of you guys watching over on Facebook, many thanks for being part of another Light 'em Up show. It's Wednesday evening, Wednesday afternoon for all of you guys in the US. I'm delighted and excited to host and welcome Mo Maali from Patina Cigars. As always, if you have any questions, please put them underneath the live video over on Facebook, and we will most definitely forward them to Mo. For all of you guys here at the lounge, I mean, you're all regulars. You know the deal. Please feel free to raise all your questions, put some comments into the chat box, or raise your hand. And without further ado, Mo, let's get cracking. Here's a guy from the south side of Chicago, right? Once called the worst part of town in a well-known song. You worked your way through many different industries. You worked your way through the cigar industry, most certainly. And here you are with Patina Cigars now. Still sort of a young company in comparison to some of the century-old, 4 or 5 generations of people within the tobacco and cigar industry.
Right. That's right.
How on earth did that all come about? And give us a little bit of the background story of Mo Maali and how you actually ended up with Patina.
Okay. I don't know how far you want me to go back, but basically I got sick of my corporate career. While I was in the corporate world, I started a cigar blog called Sultans of Smoke with my buddy Drew. And we started reviewing cigars. We had our own little unique style. We used to base our ratings on Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone movies, who, as you guys know, are 2 big cigar guys. And so we kind of built off of that, started a podcast, and then we did a cigar 2015, 2016 with James Brown of Black Label Trading. And that kind of introduced me to the whole world of tobacco and cigars and how they're made and where they're made and all of that behind the scenes a little bit more. So it piqued my interest, and I decided to just go for it. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. People still think I'm crazy, and I am crazy, but it's been worth it. And even with the FDA regulations hanging over our heads, I'm confident that we'll be able to continue forward.
Quite interesting. I'd say that you've seen all these different angles of the industry. You mentioned that you had a podcast and a live show. You worked in retail at some point of your career as well, right?
Yeah, I did.
Has all that changed or formed your individual take on how to actually run your own cigar company and start with your own brand?
Absolutely. Being able to understand the retailer and their concerns and their needs helps me relate. And so I know, for lack of a better term, I could put myself in their shoes and kind of understand where they're coming from. My job is to try to make it as easy for them as possible to sell my cigars. And had I not worked in retail, I probably wouldn't understand some of the issues that retailers have. So that helped, man, a lot.
And tell us a bit about the podcast, because obviously sort of, you know, like, especially in the last couple of months, all these virtual herfs came about, and this ultimately, I guess, is sort of the breakthrough of the new normal in terms of digitalization as well. You know, it certainly brings a lot of change for the industry.
Right.
How do you see that evolution of the industry now? What were some of the most recent developments for your company, and what's sort of the overall picture that you see being disrupted now?
Well, first, I want to thank Andre Diaz for being a motivation for me. Every time I get, you know, lazy or whatever, I just think of Andre and I do it for him. So, but no, he's been a big supporter, listens to the podcast and everything. But having to go back to your question, having the experience in the podcast world kind of helped me adjust to the COVID world of a lot of virtual stuff. So I was already pretty comfortable doing that. And so it was kind of a natural transition in that regard. And it just changed things up a little bit. For a small company like mine, FaceTime and being on the road was my great equalizer of not being able to, I mean, advertising is so expensive in the big magazines. So being on the road, things like that really helped bridge that gap. With that gone, it's opportunities like you've afforded me today to be able to bridge that gap in a different way. So again, man, I'm very thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's a wonderful transition here to a question that was sort of nagging me. I mean, there's different entry paths into the cigar industry. As we said, you know, you could be like the fourth or fifth generation of a established family. There's people who work for one of the large companies, and then there's guys like yourself, where you're like, I've been there. I've done all different things, worked in different industries. I worked in retail at the brick and mortar. You got some experience through the media world. But what was the idea of growing the brand in the first place?
It's built on creating a unique smoking experience. I knew that if my cigars smoked like a bunch of other stuff, I had no chance at success. So we really set out to redefine the way people looked at Connecticut. We looked to create a Habano that could be smoked one after the next. And you guys have that. And what really was the inspiration on that was the way Cubans are. Because Cubans, you could literally smoke one after the other and really not even feel it. It's almost as if you haven't smoked anything. So that's really, with all my cigars, that's what I go for. And then with the Maduro, we challenged to be able to have a Maduro that could be smoked by people that normally don't smoke Maduros, but also be enjoyed by people who normally smoke Maduro wrapped cigars. And thus far, we've been able to slowly demonstrate to the market that we're able to do that. But getting people to try a new brand is very difficult. And especially the longer you are in your cigar journey, the less likely it is you're willing to try something new. So really the focus is on getting people to try the brand. And I've been lucky to have, you know, if I look at my business, my book of business, 80 to 85% of my business is reorder. So it's great in a way, but when you don't have 1,000 retailers, it's limited. So we have to grow the number of retailers and show them that Patina has staying power on their shelf.
Like, it's just me being a little provocative with this question, but I'd say most people who enter the industry and start their own brand would have sort of as a value proposition to provide unique smoking experiences, you know, that are
Right.
in terms of quality and hopefully at an affordable price. How easy would you say is it still today to differentiate yourself with so many players in the industry? I guess it's a bit like when you're a musician and you want to compose a new piece, right? There will be some people who say it's all been done, we've seen it all. Yet there's others who say we've got endless opportunities, right? In which group would you say do you fall in?
So here's how I would answer. And I don't know how often you guys get to smoke non-Cuban, but if you take Davidoff, for example, that's obviously readily available. When you take, there you go, exactly. Is that the Capa 53 or whatever? Is that the new one? Special, yeah, okay, cool. Special 53, okay. And basically, if you take the band off of Davidoff, you might think it's an Avo, but typically you'll know it's a Davidoff, okay? And so it has a distinct note to it that allows you to know it's a Davidoff of some sort. It's from the Davidoff factory, right? Yeah. That's what I go with for patina. And when you smoke a patina, you know it's a patina. And that's, I think if you took the band off of any of my cigars, they are readily identifiable as patina. And that's how I knew that we had something different.
So describe a little bit of the process from the idea of starting your own brand to actually having the cigars in hand. There's this old saying for a lot of people that if you want to make a big amount of money into a small amount of money, you'd better start a cigar company. Right?
Yeah.
But
that's
what
definitely
was
true.
That process like for you, thinking about which manufacturer could I approach, which factory would I like my cigars to come out of, until you actually got to the product itself?
So the first part of your question is definitely true. I could have found a bunch of other stuff, including staying in my job, that made me more money. Luckily, I'm still able to do what I love to do outside of cigars while doing cigars, so it works out. But it's easy to go to a large factory and say, hey, can you make me a cigar? And you're going to be one of 45 brands that they make, right? And so your ability to be different or unique becomes more and more difficult the more brands that come out of a factory, right? So when I started, I went with Mombacho, Casa Favilli in Granada, Nicaragua. Claudio used to work for Davidoff. Mombacho has a pretty decent presence, I believe, in Europe still. And so they're building out there. And Claudio really did a nice job. As I look to grow the business, take it to the next level, I felt maybe a change was needed. So I moved it to Nicaragua American, which is Naxa. And really, they've started to focus on their premium cigars over the last few years, really since Steve Saka kind of took his production over there and Christian Aroa took some of his production over there. So I had a really great opportunity to be with, number one, a manufacturer that grows a lot of its own tobacco, which is key. Tobacco access is key. Excuse me. And the second part of that was because, yes, they make a lot of cigars, but I still had the ability to work closely with Raul Diesla, who's the master blender, and put my spin on patina, keep the cigars unique and how they were from bringing them over from Mombacho. So we are able to work on a larger scale and still maintain the quality and the consistency, which is key, especially coming out of a big factory or bigger factory.
Would you say at the beginning it was easier to approach a company like Mombacho and Casa Favilli?
Oh, yeah.
Such a small operation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I hadn't shown some sort of success in the market, it really would have been hard to have Naxa probably take me seriously. And I'm honest about that. I don't live in a fantasy world. I know what I'm up against and I know where I stand. So that keeps me hungry every day.
What was the one thing that you had first? Was it actually the name, the concept of the brand? Was it Patina first, or did you have a particular aroma and taste profile in mind that you were actually designing the company around?
Man, so when I first started, I was like, dude, we're gonna come out with some really cool, great Maduros and Habanos and stuff like that. And when I started doing my research, somebody was like, you really need to have a good Connecticut. And I was like, man, what? And so I was like, Connecticut? Who smokes that? But then we made a Connecticut that I liked and that I would smoke. And that really helped put the brand on the map. But my point in all of it is you could have every plan or every idea of what you want to do, and then the market will dictate something completely different to you. And so you go where the market goes, but maintain your identity within that, right? It's like, I don't know if any of you trade like futures or options or anything like that, but it's no different than that, really. The market's going to tell you the price action, and it's up to you of what position you want to take. And so I took the position of being different a little bit, but not too different to where you're just weird, right? So, that I think has worked pretty well so far.
Patina, explain a little bit about the idea, the name, the concept. I mean, for me, coming from Vienna and with such a long-lasting history and
the
just
home of Arnold
buildings look like, Patina is something that I can truly relate to. But what was your idea of just the name by itself, and then of course everything that comes with it, the typical look of Patina that you would have, and how does that actually fit into your own personality and style and character?
Sure. So as you know, I've done a lot of different, I'm a CPA by education, which is a certified public accountant. I forgot what they call it in Europe. And
Rod is just cheering, he knows exactly what's going on.
I'm a CPA too. They call them CAs. They call them CAs, chartered accountants.
CAs, yes, that's right. Chartered. When I was on a project in Egypt in 2006, those guys were CAs.
Correct.
And so, I started off as a CPA. I've traded, agricultural commodities, corn and soybeans, wheat, stuff like that. So you have this wide array of experiences. And anybody who's worked in corporate America could tell you you're going to face a lot of crap. And so even from growing up in the United States, being a little bit different, you're the son of immigrants, all of that shapes you throughout your life. Mm-hmm. But no matter what you go through, you're still yourself, right, underneath. And so just like the Statue of Liberty that's covered in patina, underneath, it's still the Statue of Liberty, right? The statues in Vienna are what they were before all of the patina on them underneath all of that. So that was kind of the logic behind it, really.
Would you see that resembled in some of the aromatic qualities of your cigars as well?
In the sense that I want, no matter what wrapper is on a cigar, no matter what the profile is, people know it's quality. And that's how I would say is the biggest thing for me is look, man, not everybody's going to like your cigar. We have one person on here right now smoking a My Father, another person smoking a Davidoff, and I'm not sure what the rest of you guys are smoking. Patina, there you go. And they all in a Blanco, okay, and they could all be quality, just different. And so, it doesn't matter what's on that band. It's what's underneath, right? That's what I always tell them. So that same logic with patina.
I think that's a very good analogy and a great way to put it. Since you had that transitioning process from Casafavilli and working with Claudio to then working with Noxa, how hard was it to make that shift? And what's sort of the feeling like and the process like when you take a well-established product, you've been working on the blends and working on all these different vitolas, and then you
Mhm.
take the whole thing and move it to another factory. You need to keep a certain consistency throughout
Sure.
all your lines. Still,
Sure.
you're working out of a totally different environment, and
Mhm.
everything changes.
Mhm. So here's the good news. Because I'm so small, the transition was a lot easier. Look, when I first decided to move, it was very scary, okay, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But in reality, it was the best thing that happened to me because, again, I'm set up for the future in a better way from a production standpoint. But at the time, it's scary, but it couldn't have happened at a better time. Better year 2, year 3 than year 5, year 10, right? So from that perspective, it really was the right time.
And what was just different in terms of the processes? Like, I mean, I guess working with Claudio, he was on the show, and he's such a fantastic gentleman. I think like one of the most knowledgeable guys you could possibly talk to in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But how did he inspire you? And then how was the inspiration and the vibe once you got to Moxa?
Claudio, his passion for cigars is contagious. And, when Claudio talks cigars, you just want to pick up a cigar and smoke one. So that's the best way I could describe him. And he was inspirational in that regard. With Noxa, just being able to, because like I said, they grow a lot of their own tobacco, having the stuff that, readily available, you're able to plan a little bit better. You're able to forecast a little bit better. And so that really, more than anything, it wasn't necessarily a process thing. It was more of a business thing. And what was going to help me set the stage to take the next step in building Patina.
Did Claudio sort of, do you see some similarities in just the way you both entered the industry and the way you think about cigars? I know that Claudio is watching. I guess he's over on Facebook, and so I want to say hello to him as well.
Claudio.
Yeah, like he had a unique career path in the industry.
Yeah.
Where did you guys click?
Oh man, I mean, the passion for cigars. Just loving cigars. See, here's the thing, man, about Claudio. It's not a money thing to him. He loves cigars. He loves tobacco. And anybody that's like that, if you get into this business for money, you're in the wrong business. It's that simple. But if you love what you're doing and you stay consistent at it, you can make a living out of it, is the way I would say it. And because of Claudio's love for tobacco and cigars, he's been able to accomplish what he has. And that type of, I don't like to use the word passion too much, but that was very inspiring to me because it was like for the love of the leaf, you know what I mean? Not the love of the green, if that makes sense. So it was, it's motivating. And so that was always great to be around.
I love the fact that you just mentioned you don't want to overuse the term passion, and it's used an awful lot in the industry, yet it truly resembles what most people feel like when they or talk about the industry. But do you see a little bit of a divide there, or do you think that it's just an overused term, whereas underneath it looks a bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, how do I say this nicely? I got to be political here. Not like our president. He just says stuff.
All good, you know.
I'm going to try to be a little bit more political.
It's the most honest.
I'm going to try to
platform.
going to try to be. So look, everybody has their motivation for doing this. I'm comfortable in my motivation. I understand why I'm doing it and what I'm doing it for. If you look at my social media, if you listen to any of the podcasts that I've done, you understand, it becomes fairly evident that I'm doing this because I love it, not because it's making me rich or making me money, because it's not. Okay. I mean, I could have been doing a million other things that make me a lot more money, but I enjoy it. I love being able, look at, the world is so divided today, and cigars have this. I mean, look at this podcast right now. I mean, we have people from the US, white, black, Middle Eastern. I mean, everything. I mean, I think we're missing somebody from Asia, but other than that, you know, we're doing great. I mean, this is amazing. This is why we do it. You know, let's bridge gaps. This is what cigars are about, right? And so this is my way of doing that. And that's it. You know, and if we're successful, then we continue doing it. If not, then back to the drawing board, as we say.
It's a great pleasure to see Andre on the show again. Andre, many thanks for tuning in. I know you're sort of busy at the lounge and you probably got people around you. I want to forward your question to Mo. And the question was, Mo, that with the move to Knoxon now, will the rest of the world be able to seeing more Patina cigars on the market? And of course, Andre was acknowledging that you wanted to focus on doing things the right way on your home turf first. But any chances we're going to see Patina in more countries in the near future?
The answer is yes. There is a very good chance that there is this island northwest of France that could potentially be getting it at some point in the near future.
Great to
if
hear.
It's considered an island, maybe they used to own half the world. So let's put it that way.
We've got a few people on the call who probably know what you're talking about. So
yeah,
we'll be excited and very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, man. So we're working on that. No, we're working on that. That would be the first step towards getting into the European market. But, some details still need to be worked out. But, with COVID just threw off a lot of stuff, man. It's just... Sure. Unfortunately. So
other than that, how do you handle distribution in the United States? Do you do it all by yourself? I know you've got a couple of sales reps that are working with you. How do you go?
So actually, it's a name that you guys would probably know. McBaron Sutliff are my distributors here in the US, the pipe tobacco guys. And so, they do just a phenomenal job. And I'm very lucky. I mean, you're talking about a 150-year-old company distributing a small brand like Patina. It's awesome. And they've been so supportive and they believe in the brand. And that's been great, man. So
you mentioned the podcast that you started a couple of minutes ago. You actually still do that, right? At the beginning, it was reviewing cigars. Now, I guess you don't do a lot of reviews anymore since you're your own.
Yeah, and we have Danny Vasquez from Roma Craft Cigars, which I think are available in some parts of Europe. So we try to stay away from talking about other people's cigars unless we like it. Then it's you talk about things you like all the time. So, but yeah, we don't typically review anymore. But yeah, the podcast is more of really, some days we don't even talk about cigars. So it's just sometimes just about life because, and for us, it's our social time of the week because we don't really hang out with anybody anymore since COVID started. So.
But certainly social media and these new platforms have changed, not just this industry, but so many others. You grew your brand also through social media. how do you make sure that you properly communicate the messages and the essence of the brand through these new channels? How do you make sure that the quintessential characteristics and the individual nuances that make Mo Maali and that make Patina, how do you communicate that through the digital world?
So I always have a saying that you could never be uncool if you were never cool to begin with. Okay. So I was never really that cool. So it's perfect. I'm able to be myself. And from the beginning of the brand until now, until 10 years from now, I'm always going to be me. So if that stays consistent, there's nothing really to change, right? Because if you're being genuine, ultimately people are going to find that refreshing, because we're all seeing just a ton of absolute BS in every facet of people just constantly putting on a show. This is not about putting on a show. It's about providing people with a unique smoking experience. And that's it. That's all it stands for. And that's all I want it to stand for. And if people want to get on with that, that's great. And if they don't, then that's okay too. I understand.
Do you see like some of the issues that you mentioned? Do you see a lot of that in the cigar industry as well, and in particular in the media side of the industry?
I'm pretty sure you can answer that yourself. Yeah, I think I don't think it takes a lot of digging. I mean, look, man, if you believe in what you're doing, you don't got to constantly tell people. It's the gym analogy that I have. Okay, you're from Austria, right? The Austrian oak, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? What does Arnold Schwarzenegger have to prove to anybody if he goes to work out at a gym? Nothing, because he believes in himself. He's confident in himself, right? Same thing. I'm confident in my product. I don't feel the need to have to go shove it down people's throats. And I think that ultimately people will respect that and want to be a part of that, because I'm not overselling myself, man. I'm saying, hey, here's a different type of cigar. Why don't you try it? And if you like it, keep smoking it. And if you don't, I understand. I mean, there's a lot of cigars that people love that I'm just like, yeah. And some cigars that people can't stand, and I'm like, that's a great cigar. So, I mean, how it is.
And also, I think there's a little bit of a divide between all the shenanigans that go on social media, and especially, some of the boutique brands that get talked about quite a lot,
right?
But in the brick and mortar and with actual sales, the picture might look a little differently. Have you experienced that as well?
You are a genius, Reinhard. Who wrote these questions? Did Mukau Rich send you questions to ask me or something? Did Ben send you questions? I mean, these are like perfectly set up for me. So as I've long said, there is a massive disconnect between what you see on social media versus what you see in the B&M. Okay, a Dominican Romeo and Julieta sells 7 million of one SKU. If a boutique brand does 7 million cigars, period, in a year, they're massive. Okay, so let's just put things into context from that regard. But it starts somewhere, right? And I always knew that you could be an internet darling, but if it's not translating on the store level, you still have your work cut out for you. But yes, I agree with you. There is certainly a disconnect between what you see on social media versus what you see in the B&M.
And I think, the key to social media and being successful there is just the online presence, and the more content you produce, and probably the more controversial content you produce, the more successful you'll ultimately gonna be, right? But what's
and I'm not good at that.
Success at the brick and mortar then?
Consistency, price point. So it was funny, when I first released Patina, everybody kept telling me it was too expensive. 3 years and some months later, I haven't raised prices at all. So my cigars are right in the wheelhouse of what most consumers will spend of premium cigars. So that is not as much of an issue anymore, but really, man, it's awareness, brand awareness. And that's what I got to get better at. And showing people that you can take a chance on a brand you've never heard of and get just as good or a better smoking experience than something that you're currently smoking. And the goal is to get people to add it to the rotation. I don't want people only smoking patina. That's how people get burnt out. So just part of a rotation. That's it. And if you're a part of enough rotations, you'll stick around for a while.
Mo, that's why I'm so thoroughly enjoying having you on the show and having this conversation with you, because I think just the depth and the insight that you're providing on how the boutique world actually looks like and putting things into perspective, because like we're all super passionate about this industry, and we had people from all walks of life here at the show, and people from the biggest manufacturers in the world, all the way down to like even people who work with accessories or have like a different angle on the industry, like Jesse Flores last week. But I think it's fantastic to hear somebody who's living and breathing boutique to its core, and having that track record of just establishing such a boutique brand within the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you. But it's not easy, man. I don't look at the boutique manufacturers as my competition. I want them all to do well. From Mombacho to Foundation to Illusioni to, Tatuwa, whatever, Roma Craft, doesn't matter. I want them to all do well. I mean, we're all in the same boat. Really, the numbers that impress you and you want it, the market that you want to try to get into is the non-boutique guys, because that's the majority. And we also have a very unique setup, at least here in the United States, and I'm not sure how the cigar scene is in Europe, but we're getting more and more female smokers now in the US. So that's another demographic, and as we see on the podcast today. So that's been another facet or another opportunity for growth. So it's just continuing to try to become boutique, stick to the boutique roots, but also be accepted mainstream. So we'll see. It's ambitious effort.
Right. You had a couple of questions. It's great to hear some of your enlightening perspectives on the industry. Share some of that with us, my friend.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on those. Mo, a pleasure.
Thank you, Rod.
Definitely, thank you. The way you pronounce my name definitely says you're from this part of the world originally. Where are you
from? My parents are Palestinian.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Good. So that makes two of us.
Okay.
Excellent. Let me. It's a whole bunch of questions. They might sound random at the beginning, but they will fall into place eventually. I'm a huge believer in boutique brands. If you look, we're the Leaf Master, we're the largest distributor of New World cigars in the whole region, in the Gulf region. And I'm really working very hard on opening people's minds and palates to basically shift from the whole thing of cigars are Cuban to the New World component. And we've been extremely successful in doing so. And I'm very happy about that. And now the second thing that we're focusing on is opening people's eyes and palates to boutique cigars. The challenges I've been having with boutique cigars, especially when I start getting the boutique cigars into Dubai, is their initial reaction is they're so lured by the US market. And so for me to come to them, and even if I'm telling them, I'm taking you to Paris, I'm taking you to Dubai, I'm taking you, he thinks about it for a second, and he's like, you know what, I can do 10th of the effort and just shoot those cigars off to Jersey versus having to get a Dubai headache that's gonna give me, make me sleepless for 2 weeks.
Right.
Just for those bunch of bozos to have those cigars. I'd much rather, go and not do that. So that's the first point. The second point, I was very much intrigued with the fact that you chose to start with Connecticut
Mm-hmm.
wrapper. I find that amazing, and I'm proud about my ignorance in that part, because when I started smoking cigars, actually up to 6 months ago, I was one of those people that believed Connecticut cigars are young cigars. They're
Mm-hmm.
useless. They're what you smoke if you don't have money.
My parents
Yeah.
said the same thing about me.
Yeah, they're what you smoke if you don't have
Yeah.
money, or if you don't know
Yeah,
anything about
I'm
cigars.
useless. Yeah.
And now I am so into Connecticut cigars. It's not even
Uh-huh.
funny.
Okay.
I don't think anything delivers flavor and aroma like what a Connecticut cigar. Don't get me wrong, the Maduros, and all of those, the Habanos are great. So my question to you is, do you think, because from the background as Middle Easterners, we're into these kinds of flavors. Do you believe your background subconsciously sort of directed your flavor pattern in terms of going in that direction? Because I find it very awkward and very interesting, the fact that you started with something like that.
So,
And my third question, are you sitting in the back of your truck?
in the back, no, I'm sitting next in the garage.
Okay.
I should. I'm going to be living there soon if I don't sell more cigars.
I know, right?
But,
No.
no, but, بعيد الشر. But
God forbid.
yeah, definitely. I'm a bit, and we've talked about this on my podcast. I'm a big believer that your diet, what you eat, what you drink, all of that will shape your palate and what you will enjoy out of a cigar. If you look at the American South, for example, full-bodied cigars typically sell better there. But if you look at the diet of the American South, it is very rich, a lot of fatty foods, a lot of things that are very, very flavorful. So it will take a lot more to engage your palate in a cigar. Now, I'm generalizing, but just using as an example. So this has kind of been my thesis. I can't prove it scientifically, but I found that when I eat lighter and I eat cleaner and I eat better, I'm more inclined to smoke lighter cigars versus if I'm eating heavy and eating bad food, I'll want something heavier. So I'm definitely with you on that. And in terms of Connecticut's, does that translate? I guess in a way, yeah, depending on what I ate that day, the Connecticut is the perfect cigar just to smoke on something, but not burn your palate out either.
Makes sense. How about your direction with regards to the temptation of moving to the other side of the world versus the demanding US market? And do you think it's going to get any of your attention? And if it does get some of your attention, can your production handle it?
Yes. It would just have to be, ramped up. Because right now I just concentrate on the US market, but with the size of the factory and the tobacco availability, ramping up production is just a matter of a phone call. Thank God for that. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how, if Europe goes, but the dream is always America and the Middle East, because I felt like that made sense. So we'll see. That's kind of what we're looking at.
Well, I'm going to be nagging on you. I can tell you that much.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rod.
Mo, at this moment in time, I guess nobody really knows what's going to happen with the FDA regulation and the change that's going on there. But is that also something that will probably not force, but at least encourage a lot of manufacturers to look into the other parts of the world a bit more closely as like just the United States?
Sure. I think when you talk about risk management, I think opening up new markets would be a nice step of risk management for cigar companies that are selling in the United States. I agree 100%. So that's why I've been a little bit more proactive in looking at some opportunities outside of the U.S. to use a financial term to hedge myself against the U.S. market. But when you're talking about sheer volume, the U.S. market is very large, and so I feel like, and especially because I live here, the majority of my resources will continue to focus on this market.
Going to the nitty gritty a little more, give us a rough overlook of the different patina lines, the different blends and tobaccos that you use. And one thing that I'm most curious about is when you started with Casa Favilli and the Macho factory, I guess you were purchasing tobaccos through their resources and their purchasing sources. Once you made the change over to Naxa, how do you still make sure that you get like the same quality of tobacco, or like the same level, or even just the same type of tobacco?
Well, we were already buying a lot of, so Naxa, there's Naxa, which is the factory, and then there's Oliva Tampa Prosenixa, which is the tobacco arm, right? So Prosenixa is basically the tobacco provider for Naxa. We were already buying tobacco from Prosenixa. So a lot of that, especially the Habano and stuff like that, the Nicaraguan stuff, that's, you know, pretty much all the same. But we use tobaccos from the US, Ecuador, Nicaragua, and Mexico.
And you still have a very clear and concise portfolio, right?
Yes, yeah. So the Connecticut, the Connecticut, Ecuador, Habano, Ecuador, and the undisclosed Maduro blend, which for purposes of FDA, I'm keeping vague in case I need to switch that.
Is that something that in general you would like to keep that way, to have like a very small portfolio that is easily understandable? Because I feel like, you know, sometimes you see manufacturers with 200 different lines and XYZ, many different blends. It feels like at some point you just get lost in the overall portfolio because it's too much to digest.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you want to keep it simple, but you also want to come out with enough new stuff that people stay engaged. But I'm a big believer that if your cigars are good enough, it doesn't matter how many SKUs you have. I'm a big believer in that. But at the same time, you still need innovation to grow. So yes, things will continue to come out, but I am not going to push it. I'm not going to come out with stuff just to come out with stuff. It has to serve a purpose. It has to have a place in the portfolio. And with the way things are set up right now, look, I'll give you an example. When I first started, everybody was full body. I want the strongest, I want this. And over the past few years, we've seen that pendulum start to swing a little bit, right? Back towards the middle. And really, the goal is to be prepared for wherever the market wants to put its focus on, right? So if it wants to go heavier, you have an offering. It wants to go lighter, you have an offering. It wants to stay in the middle, you have an offering. And that's kind of what, because going back full circle to the retail aspect, I want the retailer to be able to have, no matter what kind of smoker comes into their shop, they're able to say, hey, if you like light cigars, try this. If you like a medium type cigar, you like this. If you like, you know, whatever. And of course, all of those terms are completely relative, because there are people that will think a Cohiba Robusto is the strongest cigar they've ever smoked in their lives. And some people will say that's a breakfast smoke. So, you know, it just depends.
Would you say that the same thing is also true for ring gauges and the different Vitolas? Do you see like all these trends come and go there?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, Reinhard, is I don't chase trends. Okay. Because classic always wins out in the end. That rhymed, actually. I didn't mean it to rhyme. But yeah, man, I think if you chase trends, you get lost. So you stick to your path, you position yourself, and you're able to weather whatever storm comes your way.
Mo, we'll get a transcript for you so you can use the quote. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
yeah.
it makes for
Yeah.
a nice marketing catch there.
There's something, there's a term in trading, the trend is your friend. But in cigars, that's not necessarily the case because the trends are so fast. And these are not products that are made overnight. If you decide to bring a blend out to market, this is like a 6 month to a year process between aging, finishing up the blend, doing it, the money that you're going to invest to bring the blend to market. So, there's no fly by night type decisions that could be made.
And I think the trend argument that you brought here is quite a good analogy to that divide that we spoke about earlier between what's happening in social media world and the actual brick and mortar on the retail side, right? It's like, I mean, bad news is always good news, right? So trends is like that. You can talk about everything and you can write shit up in the biggest way possible. Yet it doesn't mean that it will ultimately transition into actual sales or the numbers, right? So I think you have to be understanding of what's going on in the market and what is just written up in the media, but what's actually happening with the smokers.
Sure, absolutely. I've been very lucky to have a wide network of people, from retailers to consumers to other manufacturers. I tried to keep up with the latest of what's happening, what's going on in the marketplace. I think that's extremely crucial. You can't be making decisions off of bad information because you'll screw yourself in the end. I think in terms of Patina, the presence, all of that, Patina is probably bigger than some people think and smaller than other people think, depending on, your vantage point, right? So the goal is to continue to make the reality bigger, not just the perception, or vice versa, right? So that's kind of, but I'm with you, man. There is a massive disconnect. You got to be able to drown out the noise. You have to.
One thing I'm curious about is you mentioned the U.S. tobacco briefly. You have a little sweet spot for Pennsylvanian tobacco, or where did that come from, actually? Because you use
so
it.
That was kind of like something that Claudio and I worked on. That we wanted something different, wanted something from the U.S. That we could incorporate into the cigars. I actually use both broadleafs in my cigars, Connecticut and Pennsylvania. So that's a little secret, but whatever. We're amongst friends here, I guess. Man, I love the flavor profiles, and they both give you a different flavor profile. So, and then the different parts of the plant give you, Pennsylvania Ligero could be very, very strong and very full. Whereas Pennsylvania, Viso will give you a nice little citrus type twist to your cigar. It's pretty interesting. So it just depends. But that's my palate. I mean, that might translate completely different to somebody else. So
great follow-up question on that from Reinhard. I guess it was a question.
My God, you couldn't have said it better. This is like a beautiful tennis game. It's brilliant.
That's how we play it.
Yeah,
it's planned.
No, Mo, I'm sure you still have that, or you had that when you were a kid, sitting from where we come from. Your grandmother smokes shisha, or what they call in the US, hookah or hubbly bubbly.
Yeah.
But they don't use the stuff, or they don't smoke the stuff that everybody smokes now, which is crap. They smoked real tobacco, what they used to call blonde tobacco. And I remember making the whole thing for her. And it's like it comes from a Turkish background. And what you do is you take the tobacco, you soak it in water overnight. You take the tobacco then and you form it into literally like a crown. And then you put the coal in the middle of the crown, and it's a single coal.
Yeah.
And my grandmother would smoke 5 of those a day. And and then it passes on to different members of the family. But what happens is that tobacco is sourced from different parts of the Middle East. And my question to you, and this is a question that I've asked about 4 or 5 people in the industry so far. Have you ever thought of using some of this stuff to give a very interesting twist to some of your cigars? The question, let me give you a bit of a cheat sheet here. The kind of answers I've been getting is that you need to be able to source that tobacco. I mean, that tobacco needs to be readily available from the people that basically sell that tobacco.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't it worth to do an interesting project in something like this?
You know, if we get to that point, sure. Right now, I'm more in survival mode than. The first order of business that, like, if we're talking about different tobaccos that we want to use, Peruvian has always been something that I love.
I agree.
Byron and Atabey are 2 cigars that use Peruvian in a fantastic way. Nelson Alfonso is one of the gentlemen of the industry. But you never say never, but you touched on the most important point: consistency. People always ask me, well, why don't you try Cameroon? Well, how regularly am I going to be able to get good quality Cameroon? Okay. I mean, and that's a big question. Connecticut broadleaf. Why don't you use more Connecticut broadleaf? Well, you know what? There are shortages from time to time of Connecticut broadleaf. So, and this goes back to what was a main motivator of Patina: create something unique using tobaccos that are readily available, because that is the only way to get consistency. Anybody can go out and grab the craziest tobacco and do some one-off stuff, but you want to be able to use tobacco that I can get today, tomorrow, the day after, 5 months from now, a year from now, to be able to have that consistency. And so overall, I like to keep it pretty simple. And but anytime you can do some crazy stuff, that's cool too. But to be a long answer, I have not considered it up to this point, because for the same reasons, being able to achieve consistency and things being readily available.
Do you believe that boutique cigars should be rated or should be evaluated in a different manner than the way mainstream cigars are being evaluated?
No, because we are using just as good, or if not better, tobacco. So why would we cheapen ourselves to be in our own category? I believe, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but there are cigars on the market today that sell for, $25, $30 USD, and they're using the same exact tobacco that's in my $12 cigar, $10 cigar. And so, I think there's a little bit more craft in what we're doing versus some of the bigger players, where it's more like a process versus almost like an automobile factory versus like an artisan, like Ferrari factory, for example. Where things are handmade. I mean, they're all handmade, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I'm sorry, can I continue? I'm like on a.
Of course, please do, brother.
I find it very interesting, the amount of association that, I mean, in the good old days, boutique brands wanted to have some sort of an association with the mainstream brand. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of the opposite actually happening. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the big boys realized that there was this market for, it started with, and I'm not a drinker, obviously, but in the United States, there was this big push on like craft beers and stuff like that. And these craft beers started to eat into some of the market share of the big boys, right? So then the big boys started making these small batch, this, that, and the other. Well, the same thing kind of happened in the cigar market. Some of these boutique brands, like these guys that have been established for years, like a Tatawahe or an Illusione or a Roma Craft, These guys have done. Drew Estate was boutique at one point. I mean, these guys really came out with some incredible cigars, and they started to make a little bit of a dent. Not a huge one, but a little bit, enough to be noticed that, hey, there's this market for, you know, crazy marketed cigars that, you know, are different or using different tobaccos. And I think the big boys saw an opportunity there. And yes, they've actually tried to do a little bit more boutique style stuff over recent years. I think that's a great observation, and I agree 100% on that.
Great.
Right, Mo, that's a wonderful point. And since my background is wines and spirits, I mean, we've seen
Back at you.
thing after the craft beer movement in the spirits industry.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer there was really merger and acquisition. And so that's something that I'm curious about. Do you think it's going to be more of the bigger players trying to come out with their own sort of craft or boutiques? Or will it be more like, look, they've been doing it for 5 years. Let's just eat up one of the smaller players.
That is an excellent question, and a lot of the answer will depend on what happens with the FDA. Because if the FDA fees become astronomical, you're probably going to see some smaller brands try to sell their portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my guess. I could be wrong.
Very interesting.
Usually I am wrong, so don't take that as...
Mo, and like totally different direction, but the one thing I really loved was before you mentioned some of the citric qualities that you would get from Pennsylvanian Viso and all these other very nuanced sensory descriptives. How did you actually educate your own palate, and how do you sort of work on creating new blends? Obviously you have to work with particular factories and the people down there, but what is your unique approach when actually coming up with a new line or a new blend? Is it the aromatic profile first, and then you sort of reverse engineer and look like which types of tobacco do I need in order to make that happen? Or what's the process like?
So number one, don't have an ego. Don't pretend that you know everything. I am not a master blender. I don't play one on TV, and I don't pretend to be one. What I have is a palette, and the master blenders help me translate that palette into the cigar that I want. So whether it was Claudio or now Raul Diesla, I've been lucky to work with some pretty incredible people. With that said, I smoke all types of cigars, from Cuban to Dominican, not so much Honduran, but Nicaraguan. So I'm always keeping my palate on edge, if you will. I don't like my palate to get complacent, because that's when the creativity will end. So I try to always smoke different stuff and always look for, hey, what kind of tobacco do they use in this? What kind of, man, what is that? And that really is what keeps me going. And for me, the aroma is very important, but really it's flavor profile that really, and I feel like if you go for flavor profile, the aroma will come. If you get it right, it's going to taste good and smell good, but it's got to taste good first. In my opinion. I mean, that's just, you know.
I very much share your curiosity whenever you smoke a particular cigar, you actually want to know like all the intricate details of the blends. And what nags me a little bit is quite often you will see very generic descriptives of what is used in particular cigars. Now I get that some manufacturers need a little flexibility because with every year you have a different crop, so you might have to tweak things a little here and there. But since we also spoke about Davidoff before, the one thing I truly enjoy is just how open they very openly communicate which particular types of tobacco. But not only that, they also give you information about the primings that they use.
100%.
It just makes my experience being a little bit of a geek more pleasurable and enjoyable, because it gives me a lot of information, which is truly nice.
I definitely understand that. And I always respected that about Davidoff. Basically, what Davidoff is saying is, here, you could have our recipe. Good luck making it as good as we do, right? That so that that's kind of the approach that they take. I don't keep it vague on purpose, but it's more so just to protect myself in case, again, you have to change stuff, or in a time of increasing regulation, the less information, the better. So that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. As you mentioned with the Maduro, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think we just have to be smart about how much we disclose. So yeah, that's not trying to hide anything. That's just an unfortunate side effect of what we're facing.
I fully understand and appreciate that, of course. Mo, what would be your desert island cigar? Since you smoke an awful lot of different stuff, you obviously smoke a lot of your own stuff. What would be that one cigar that you always find yourself going back to?
Besides my own stuff, right? That's going to be a toss-up between the Bolivar for La Casa del Habano, the Libertador, or an Atabey. Yeah, I think it would be between those two. Maybe a Byron's in the running, but I think I would probably take an Atabey over a Byron. But I think the Bolivar probably, or a Cohiba Robusto.
And which patina?
Oh man. If I'm taking one of those, then I got to do the Patina Maduro. If I'm not doing one of those, then I take the Patina Habano. The Habano is the one that I smoke the most of.
Perfect. Mo, it's been such a wonderful conversation, and as I said before, what I find amazing is just to get some of those very valuable and deep insights into what the life of a boutique brand owner really looks like. Because I sometimes feel like things, are all tidied up and everything looks shiny and glossy and beautiful, and everybody's very passionate about the industry. But there's a lot of, like tough work of hustling and bustling behind that. Obviously, we all know, but also some of these more, iffy details and things that you really need to wrap your head around when you want to succeed in this industry on a long-term run. Like just getting some of your feedback on that and just some of your insights, I think is amazing and fantastic to get a different angle on the industry and a better understanding of what's actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely learn how to handle rejection quite well. And that's why you succeed, because look, if I came out with Patina and it took off right away, all the lessons and the foundation of long-term success will be missed. And the brand will be built on a house of cards. But the rejection, the failure, the obstacles, and the successes build a foundation that is strong, that will allow for long-term success, because now I have those lessons. Now I could recognize when something's not, going my way or not right. And so that is why I believe we're set up for long-term success. Michael Jordan once said, I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And that could not be more true. I'm a big believer in that you gotta have some lumps before you could really take off.
I couldn't agree more. And Mo, this I feel tells us all there is to know about you as a person, you as a passionate brother of the leaf and the manufacturer and cigar industry. So many thanks for sharing that.
I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.
Watching, we have another exciting lighting up session next week, next Thursday, obviously. So please be on the lookout for the next session. It was an absolutely amazing opportunity to have Mo Maali on the call. So many thanks for tuning in. And I wish you all the very best. Have a great evening, and I'll see you all next Wednesday. Until then, please be safe and light them up. Thank you.